Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. On today's video we'll be learning how to make an off-shoulder princess dart blouse. Okay, so if you're new here, you're welcome. Please kindly subscribe. If you're not subscribed, then ensure you put on your bell so that anytime I upload a video you'll be the first to get notified. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for returning. I appreciate you. So on this tutorial today, I'll be showing us how to draft an off-shoulder princess dart using our basic bodice pattern. Now, I previously drafted a video on how to draft a basic bodice pattern. It is beginner friendly. The difference between what I have on the screen and that pattern is the underbust line. So, but before we begin, I'll just go ahead and run down what we have on our paper. I'm going to just explain what the lines are on my paper. So at the top I have my shoulder line, and then the armhole line, the chest line, the bust line, the underbust line, and the waistline. So these are all the lines that I have on my pattern. And do note that when you're drafting your pattern, you are drafting it on fold, okay? The front is always going to be on fold. Now the next measurement we'll be placing on our pattern is the bust span measurement, distance from one nipple to the other. So in this situation, the distance from one nipple to the other is 7.5 inch, and 7.5 inch divided by 2, because the pattern is on fold, we have 3.75. So 3.75, I place it on the waist, on the bust line, the bust line, and then we are going to be connecting these 3 points together. So let me repeat what I just said. Now the bust span divided by 2, 3.75, I placed it on my bust line, waistline, and on the bust line. So from the bust line I came down by 1 inch so that we can be able to accommodate the bust. If you're on a large size, you can go down by 2 inches. For a medium size, 1 inch is okay. For a small size, you can go by ½ inch or quarter of an inch. Now at the waistline, we are going to be opening up the dart at the waist. So at the waistline I took a dart of 1.75 inch, and we divide that by 2 on both sides. We have 0.8. So I'll be placing 0.8 on both sides of my bust span line to create the dart. So now I'm going to go ahead and join from the waist to meet the point where we marked at our bust line. So I'll just go ahead and create my dart for both sides. Now after we've created our dart, okay, the waist dart has been formed. Now the next thing we are going to be working on is to take the bust span. Now for my pattern, I have the front and the back is not the same. The front is 16 inches while the back is 15. So we need to take a side dart for this pattern. Now for the side dart, you need to come down from the bust line by 1 inch. So the difference between the front and the back pattern of this pattern is 1 inch. So I'll be placing 1 inch away from my bust line, and I will connect it back to my bust point like that. So the way I just did it in the video, that's how we took our side dart. Now after I have gotten my side dart, next up I'm going to go ahead and mark my bust radius. Now the bust radius is the distance from your bust point down to your underbust. So you need to measure that, and then you can use that as your neckline for the off shoulder. Now I'm going to place a tape on my bust point down to the underbust line. So the distance I have there is 3.5, and what I'll do is to take it up and then place a mark at 3.5 inch. So this is the bust radius. Now the distance from your bust point to your underbust is the bust radius, and what I have, the value I got is what I placed from my bust line upward to create the new neckline for this pattern. So now I'm going to just go ahead and draw a line across the paper to create our new neckline for this pattern. So you can see the reason why I used a complete bodice is so that beginners can learn, so that they will not get confused. So now I have my new neckline created. This is where the off shoulder is going to come into play. Now for the neckline of this pattern, you need to know how wide you want your pattern to be. You want the neckline of your pattern to be. Now most times if you take away half 1.5 inch or 2 inches from your shoulder line, you can create a perfect neckline for your off shoulder pattern. Now for this tutorial, for the sake of this pattern, I'm going to take away 2 inches from my shoulder line. So my shoulder is 14 inches divided by 2, and that will be 7. So I'll take away 2 inches from 7, and that will give me 5 inches. So that value is what I'll be placing on that neckline that we just drew on our paper. I hope you understand. If you don't want to do it that way, you can just measure from one brass strap to the other, and whatever value you have there, you place it on your fabric or on your paper. But let's say if you measured from one brass strap to the other on your body, and you got like 10, you know that your pattern is divided into 2, it's folded into 2, so you need to divide that by 2, and that will be like 5 inches. So it's basically almost the same thing. So now I will place the value I have, 7 minus 2, that will be 5 inches. I place that on my neckline, and now we are going to draw our new neckline for the off shoulder pattern. So I'll just take my curve ruler, and then I'll just place it. Make sure that your curve is not too deep, and then we'll go ahead and create the curve, the armhole curve for this pattern. Now we've created the armhole. With the old armhole is no longer important, so I'm going to erase that from the pattern so we don't get confused with too much lines. So now I have my off shoulder neckline. We are going to go ahead and cut off the remaining part that is no longer necessary for this pattern. So I'll just go ahead and cut it off right now, and then we can go ahead and work on the other parts of this pattern. Alright, so now after cutting off that part, now you can choose to go higher depending on what your preference is. So for the sake of this illustration, that is why I used my bust radius, but you can go higher than that if you want your off shoulder to be a little bit higher than what I have on my paper. Okay guys, so now we are going to be doing an under bust tightening for this pattern. So what you need to do next is to take your tape, and then you're going to measure what you have on your underbust. So you're going to have to measure your round underbust. Okay, now when you measure that, you place the value at the underbust line. So for this I have 30 divided by 4, that is 7.5. so I'll place 7.5 at my underbust line. So you can see after placing a mark right there, I still have excess, and I'm going to measure what I have as the excess. Right there I have 1.75. that is the excess I have. So that is what I'll use for my underbust tightening. So I'm going to be placing half an inch inward. Now from the center of my dart, I will place half an inch inward, and then mark a point at where half an inch is on my paper at the underbust line. Now from that center line as well, remember that our underbust, the difference we had was 1.75. okay, now when we take away half an inch from 1.75, I have 1.25. so the remaining 1.25 is what I will place at the side front of my pattern. Okay, I hope you understand that. From the center line, I placed a mark at half an inch at the center front. Okay, and at the side front I placed a mark of 1.25. you can go 1.5 depending. So now I'm going to reconnect it back to meet the bust point. Okay, so from the underbust where I marked my dart of half an inch inward, I will take my curvy ruler, and then I'll mark a curve from that point to meet my bust point. And also I'll do the same thing for the other side, but then I'm going to bring down the dart to touch the dart leg of the waistline. So just pay attention to the way I'm connecting the darts on this video. So now I've connected the dart for the center front. So for the side front, I will do the same thing. I will take my ruler, okay, the curvy part of the ruler, okay, and then I will connect it back to the bust point, and also connect the underbust down to the waistline of my dart. So it's just very clear. Just pay attention, and also pay attention to the way I am using my curve ruler to connect this dart. So I reconnected it back to my bust line, okay, to my bust point line. So you can see that the underbust tightening has been created. You can see the effects that it has at the underbust. You can see the bust curve right there at the underbust line. And so guys, moving on to creating the armhole princess seam. On my armhole, I'll be taking 1.5 inch away from the edge of the armhole, and I'll place a mark right there. And from that point, I'll take my curve ruler to create a bust cut that would connect from the armhole down to meet the dart, the 1 inch dart we took below the bust line. So the dart that we have below the bust line, we are going to reconnect it back to the armhole. So you can see that the princess seam at the armhole has been formed. Now we need to get a dart on our armhole, and to be able to create a dart on the armhole, I'm going to slash open the line that I just marked from my armhole to down to the bust line. So I'll just take a scissors and then we'll open up the line that we just marked, the princess seam that we just marked from the armhole to meet the bust line. Okay, so the reason why we are slashing this line open is so that we can be able to fold our side darts and the princess darts at the armhole can be formed. So while you're slashing down to the armhole, while you're slashing down to the bust line, when you get to the bust line, you turn your paper and then also go ahead and slash the bust line a bit. So this will give you more room at the bust point, at the bust line, and it will also enable you to be able to fold your side darts properly. So now after slashing, now I'm going to be folding in my darts, the side darts. So you're going to be taking one side of the dart to meet the other legs of the dart. So one leg of the dart, you're going to fold it over to meet the other leg of the dart. Now you can see as we are folding in our side dart, the armhole princess seam at the front, at the armhole, has been created. So you can see how we just did that. Now this is a technique in dart manipulation. I'm going to show you that in our next video. So after we've gotten that, now we are going to go ahead and cut out our pattern. So you also make sure that those pointed edges you have at the underbust line, you smoothen that out before cutting. Now please note that this pattern does not have a seam allowance to it. Okay, so when I'm done cutting, I'm going to add my sewing allowances to it after that. So this is what I have for my off-shoulder princess dart bustier blouse for the front. So for the front, I'm going to also modify the neckline. I'm not just going to leave it straight up. So my neckline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch to create a curve, a deep curve on the neckline. You can decide to leave yours like this, but I'm going to curve in my neckline by 1 inch. So I came down 1 inch from the center front, and I'll use my curve to connect the curve, and then we are going to be cutting it out. So this is what the neckline for the front would look like after you've cut out that 1 inch. Moving on to the back, okay, I have my basic bodies for the back. I have the chest line, the bust line, and the waistline. So I'll just go straight and show you how the back is. It's very easy. So I took 3.5 inch for the neckline for the front. I'll do the same thing for the back. So from the bust line, I'll go up by 3.5 inch, and I'll just mark a point right there. From there, I'll take my ruler and place a straight line to create the neckline for the back. Now from the zipper allowance line, I'm going to mark my 5-inch neckline, and then I'll place a mark right there on the neckline. From there, we are going to create the armhole curve for the back. So you take your curvy ruler now, and then you mark a point from that point to meet your armhole curve. Note that you are not going to be creating a deep curve because this is an off shoulder, and if you make it a deep curve, you might not be able to move your arms freely. So I might also have a lot of gaping at the armhole side. So this is what the armhole for the back looks like, and like we did for the front, we are going to be cutting out the neckline as well, so that we can go ahead and place our darts. Now for the darts, I'll do the same thing. My bust span divided by 2, that is 7.5 divided by 2, 3.75. I'll place that mark on my waistline, and then I'll come to my chest line. Also, I'll place 3.75 as well, I use my ruler to connect these points together to create the straight line for the dart intake. Now after we've gotten that line, now we are going to be opening up the dart at the back by 1 inch, so half inch on both sides of the dart leg. So I'm going to be marking half an inch at the waistline for both sides of the dart leg, and that will be 1 inch for the dart, and then we are going to be reconnecting it back to our chest line. Alright, so now we are going to do a princess seam for the armhole of the back. Now because I want to do a princess seam for the back, I'm going to also mark 1.5 inch on the armhole, and then I'm going to reduce my dart legs at the chest line to meet the bust line. Okay, that's what I will do. So because I want to create a princess seam at the neckline, at the armhole of the back, I'm going to reduce my dart legs to touch just my bust line from the chest line. So the way I've just cleaned off the dart legs now. But if you don't want your princess seam at the back, you can just go ahead and leave the dart legs where they are, bearing in mind that you will not be splitting this pattern into two. But because I want to split it into two, so we are going to be having 4 panels at the back, I've reduced my dart leg from the chest line to my bust line. So the dart from the waist is going to be stopping at the bust line. So I'll just go ahead and remark it again because I've taken off 1 inch away from the dart at the chest line. Okay, so now the dart is stopping at the bust line. All right, so now we can now go ahead and take our princess seam. So what I did for the front is what I will also do for the back. So I'll just take my curve now. Okay, I'll just take my curvy ruler now, and then I will just go ahead and reconnect it to meet my bust line. So it's as simple as that. You don't need to do a lot of curve for the back. Once you are able to get a nice curve for your back, just go ahead and connect it. So the way I've just placed my ruler, from the 1.5 inch I took on my armhole line, I'm going to connect from my bust line down to meet the armhole. So you can see that the armhole for the back has been formed. It's simple and easy, right? I know. So if you, like I said, if you don't want an armhole for your back, you can leave your dart on your chest line, and then you can go ahead and sew it up. You'll be only be having the princess seam at the front panel of your pattern. Also for the back neckline, I decided to also draw a curve to meet the chest line. Okay, I want the back neckline to be sort of a little bit deeper, so I decided to connect from the neckline down to meet the chest line, and then reconnect it back to my zipper. So this is it for the back, and at the point where I have my zipper, I'm going to take at the waistline, I'll be taking half an inch inwards so that we can eliminate any sort of back bulge, and okay, so that we don't have any bulginess at the back of our pattern. So I'll be taking away half an inch inward from my pattern, and also from the zipper side also I'll be taking away half an inch, and then I will go ahead and reconnect it back to the pattern. All right, now we're going to cut out, and after cutting out the back, this is what the back and the front looks like. Okay, now for the center side front, I extended the princess seam by 1 inch, so that when I join the center front and the side front, I don't have a shortage at that point. So you can see the extension that I made, and I went ahead to add my seam allowances all around the pattern. So this is what my front panel looks like, and this is what the back looks like. Moving on to the sleeve. Okay, for the sleeve now we need to get our round shoulder measurements, and also you need to get your chest line as well. That is your chest for the front and for the back. So for the round shoulder measurements, I have you just place your tape around your shoulder and measure it firmly, and what I have there for my round shoulder is 40 inches. Now for your neckline, for the width of the neckline that I'm working with here, that is, you can measure from one strap to the other. Now by the time you take this measurement from one strap to the other, in my own situation I had 10 inches. So whatever you have there, you place it on your measurement. So for my neckline, I have 20. That is 10 for the front, 10 for the back. Now we need to minus 20 from 40. So 40 minus 20 will give us 20. Now why we have 20 is because for the sleeve you have the sleeve at the front and for the back. So the sleeve needs to go around the back, and by the time we divide, and for it to go around the back you need to divide it by 4. So by the time you divide it by 4 you have 5. So for the front, one of the sleeve is 5, and at the back you have 5 for the front, and for the back you have 5 and 5. That will be 10 for the front, 10 for the back. I hope we understand that. Now for the drafting of the sleeve cap heights, so for the cap's height of the sleeve, we are going to be working with our bust circumference divided by 12. Now my bust circumference divided by 12 is 3 inches, and we are going to be adding extra 1 inch for it, so we are going to have 4 inch for the cap height. Now I'm going to place this measurement on my pattern paper to illustrate how to cut off the off shoulder sleeve. It's very easy, and the length of the sleeve I'm working with here is 20 inch plus 1, that will be 21 inch. So now I have my paper here with me. I'm going to go ahead and place my cap height on this paper. Now note that if you're drafting directly on your fabric, you're going to be placing it on fold. Okay, you're going to be placing it into 2, and because I'm using this paper as an illustration, I'll just go ahead and assume that this paper is on fold. Now the first thing we need to do is to get our cap height, and what I have on my paper is 4 inch. So from the top of the pattern, I'm going to measure 4 inch for the cap height of the sleeve. So I'll place my tape at the top of the paper and I'll mark 4 inches. So wherever 4 inches is on my tape, I'll place a mark right there. I'll also place that mark all across the paper and use my ruler to draw a line across the paper. So from there, I'll also place my tape and then I'll measure the length of the sleeve. So I said I'll be working with 20 inch plus 1 inch folding allowance at the bottom, and that will give us 21 inch. Now for you to be able to know the length, the width of the fabric to put on fold, you use your armhole, half of your armhole. Okay, so your armhole, if it is 17 or 18, divided by 2, whatever that value is, you place it, half of it, on your fabric or a pattern paper, and then you go ahead and add 2 to 3 inches depending on how much seam allowance you want to add to your fabric. So half of your armhole is what you're going to use to fold your fabric. All right guys, now the length of the sleeve has been gotten. So on my cap height where I drew my line, I'm going to place my armhole circumference on that line. So my armhole is 7.5. I'll place it, that's half of my armhole. I'll place it at that point and then I'll mark a point right there. Okay, so the reason why we are using the armhole, the half of the armhole, is so that that point is going to be sitting at the armhole and it will give the arm enough room to move around, okay, when you attach it to your bodies. All right, next measurement we are going to use now is the round shoulder and the neckline that we've deducted. So the 5 inch that we've gotten on our pattern, after we've minus the chest line, that's the neckline, from the round shoulder, the 5 inch, that's what we are going to put at the top of our sleeve. So I'll go ahead and mark 5 inch at the top of my sleeve. From that point, we are going to use our curve to reconnect back to the armhole. So it's easy, you can see how easy and straightforward the pattern is. Now I'll use my ruler to reconnect and create a curve. Now note that you're not creating a deep curve. This is an off shoulder sleeve, so just use your curve and slightly curve it to meet the armhole line that you've created on your pattern. So after I've gotten this now, this is what our armhole looks like. All right, now moving on to the opening, the sleeve opening. I'll place my points, okay, at my sleeve opening. I have 4.5 inch for the sleeve opening, so I'll place a mark right there, and then I'll use my ruler to connect from the sleeve opening down up to meet the bisect line. That's the armhole that we marked previously. So I'll just go ahead and connect these 2 points together, and our sleeve has been formed. Guys, please, if you watched up to this point, please give me a like, leave your comments in the comment section, and if you have any fashion inspiration, you let me know in the comment section, and I'll try my best to reply to each and every one of you guys. Alright guys, this is what the armhole looks like. This is what the off shoulder sleeve looks like. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.